Hey there, it's JG, and today I'm playing Eternal Evolution, and the global launch of this game was just a few weeks ago, so it's still very much in its infancy, and I'm just a couple of weeks in as well, and so I just wanted to drop a quick review of this game, at the, half a month mark or so, and, talk about what I think is going well, what I think could be improved. One of the things I really like is already I've gotten, I think, two different in-game questionnaires or surveys about content and how I'm liking it and if I'm discovering things well. So hopefully the developers are really looking for some good feedback here, and maybe we'll take some of these things into account as they continue to develop the game. So I'll just jump right in and give my overall rating. I give this game right now about 3 stars out of 5. I'm enjoying it. I'm continuing to play. It's not overwhelmingly good. Not 4 or 5 stars yet. I think there's definitely some room for improvement, and since it is a young game, it certainly can develop quite a bit over time. But good enough that I'm still playing and that I'm having fun with it, and plan to stick with it for a little while and see kind of how it goes over time. One thing that's going well is just the production value here. The graphics look good. The sound and the music are pretty solid. Honestly, these aren't things that are terribly important to me in games. As far as graphics go, I'm totally down with pixelated 2D graphics. It's all about gameplay to me. Some of my favorite recent games have been Baba Is You and Stardew Valley, both very 2D, pixel sprite graphics. And as far as sound and music go, honestly, mobile games especially, I almost always play on mute. So I hear this a little bit, but definitely doesn't make my gameplay experience. But certainly they made it look nice. One of the things that I really love, especially having come to this game from Raid, is it's really respectful of your time. It doesn't feel heavy on the grinding and just taking hours every day. I measured out how much time I was spending in Raid, and it was like 6 hours a day or something like that. It's very easy to get through your daily tasks in probably about an hour in this game. I've been spending a little more than that because I also just kind of poke around and look at my heroes and sift through my equipment and sort of like try out new stuff a little bit. Certainly, they could go up a little bit from here as they release new content, and it wouldn't feel overwhelming. I really like a lot of the mechanics that they have to help you move through things quickly. So there's a number of battles that have a fast forward button on them, so you can just kind of like jump straight to the end, auto battle the whole thing in just seconds. The dungeon like content, you get 3 tickets a day, and you can spend them all in one run, so you can just get 3x the rewards. And in the various places where you're using tickets like that, uh, if you lose the battle, you don't lose the ticket, and so there's no risk in like wagering, 3 tickets all at once. Um, most of the pieces of content, you can try on a harder difficulty level, and if you can't beat it, that's okay. Nothing lost, and you can just go back to the level that you've beaten before. So generally, in terms of just like player time and attention, they feel like they've struck a really nice balance, and it doesn't feel like this game is just trying to devour my soul or anything like that. That said, there's not a whole lot else that I would call out as highlights at this point. I mean, it is just a hero collector RPG style game. Uh, you know, classic mechanics in there, like they're all solid. It's worth playing. Not a lot of things that really jump out at me as things worth highlighting here. I do have a few things I'll call out as negatives, though. So we'll start with a couple of small ones. One, the early game seems to go by really, really quickly in this game, in that you sort of age out of the initial content, I think, more rapidly than is maybe healthy. At the very beginning, you've got 4 different rarities of heroes in this game. You've got common, rare, elite, and triple S elite, and um, literally there's no point in the game where you're using common heroes. Like they give you some rare heroes right off the bat. You're able to get a few more right off the bat, and so common heroes are like trash from the first minute. And the game does do a good job of making it easy to throw away trash and get rid of it. But there's kind of like no point to having the common heroes. Like you face them as enemies, but you pay zero attention to them. And really, within like the first couple of days, you're also done with the rare heroes. You're into like only elites on your team ever, and have sort of like aged out of the bottom two rarities of heroes completely. Like all they are is just food for level ups after that, and that seems like a really rapid pace to like within 2 days just be ignoring 2/3 of the heroes that exist in the game. I think they could have stretched that out a little bit. Similarly, the equipment has a couple of tiers. I think it starts at rare, elite, and then epic. And again, within about a week, anything below epic is just trash. And I'm at the points where I'm mostly focusing on the level above epic, and so it feels like there's just a lot of stuff that is throwaway content that you don't really ever spend any time paying attention to it. I think they could slow down the beginning of the game a little bit and give you a little more time to learn the ropes and play around with sort of the starter content. A second thing, having come here straight from Raid, honestly, it feels somewhat derivative of Raid in a couple of ways. And I mean, like, I know in general the Hero Collector RPG, like, there are just some classics of the genre. The ticket system for recruiting heroes, like, that's just, they're going to have something like that in any of these games. I don't fault them for that by any means. But, looking at some of the, like, dungeon-like content, this boss in the Disa Caves has this shield where you have to hit them a certain number of times, within a certain time limit to make the shield go away. A lot like the Fire Knight in Raid, and including with like a fire-like background here. There's this marsh with like a spider boss that has a bunch of little spider minions that it summons that you have to deal with in that battle. Even the guild boss just artistically looks a lot like the clan boss in Raid. It's just a giant monster. It's standing at the edge of a cliff, so you can like hit it in the stomach area, and then it just kind of smashes down on you with attacks. In the arena here, you've got two different arenas. You've got a one-team arena, and you've got a 3-team on 3-team arena. A lot of these, it's not a huge deal to have these be similar, but like it's a little bit eerily similar in a few ways. That like there's enough different content in here. Like I feel like they could have done a little better and not been quite so directly derivative of other things in the genre. Now, another thing I want to talk about is polish. And there are some small aspects to this, but I think they connect to some larger things. So let's take a look here. Let me move my camera over to the other side. And so we've got Randall, the Phantom Assassin here. Phantom with an F. Okay, you can do that if you want to. So yeah, this second skill here says Phantom Assassin with a PH. The first skill has Phantom Assassin with the F again. And this skill you've got they talk about Randall instead of Phantom Assassin. So like they're really inconsistent in how they describe certain mechanics here. Here they're just talking about the name. They sometimes call him by his name, sometimes they call him by his title here, Phantom Assassin, and they spell that in multiple different ways. In general, that one's not a big deal. I can figure out that they're talking about the same thing in all these cases. But there's some other places where it matters a little bit more. So, for instance, here, the skill here says there's a chance to stun enemies within the specified range for 1 second, and has this extra highlighted text, chance is based on accuracy. I've seen, I think, 2 skills that have this clause, chance is based on accuracy. My understanding is that the chance to place a debuff is always based on accuracy, that accuracy versus resist is the core mechanic in deciding whether a debuff gets placed or not. But there's a couple places where they very specifically say chances based on accuracy. And so that raises the question, are these 2 skills actually functioning differently from every other debuff skill because they call out chances based on accuracy, or were they just inconsistent in describing the skills? There's a ton of inconsistency in the text that we see on these, just from things like how they refer to the character, whether they refer to them by name or title, They have like different verb tense in here. Like it kind of seems like they had a bunch of different interns write the text, and they just like weren't on the same page about how to describe certain things. Let's go back to the base and look at the divine prototypes. They use the word "shall" all over the place. When an allied assassin or hunter, they shall have a 30% chance to inflict bonus damage. Shall gain an additional 8% defense. The word "shall" is all over the place in the divine prototypes. They don't use the word "shall" that much in hero skill descriptions. So like they're it's just a small issue of polish when you're just talking about like how they describe the things. But the thing is, understanding what a hero's skills do is a critical element of this game. Understanding which heroes you should invest in is critically dependent on knowing what their skills do and how good they might be. And so using inconsistent language there can really mess you up in asking the question of, okay, like, is this skill different than any other skill that plays a stun because you called out chances based on accuracy, or are you just being inconsistent there? It matters in that context. Here's another one that really bothers me. Passive skill here. When the skill is cast, what skill? This is a passive skill. This skill doesn't get cast. Does this mean when any skill is cast? Does this mean when the energy skill is used? It makes it very confusing to understand. When does this trigger? How valuable is it? Is this a good hero? A similar one for the ultimate skill on Randall here. It says, after the strikes, cooldown time of Phantom Assassin will be reset. Okay, so the other skills are called, so we've got Phantom Spike, Flash Cut, Shrewd Phantom, Dancing Blade. There is no skill called Phantom Assassin in here. So what does that mean? Does that mean the cooldown on all skills is reset? Or does it mean something else? So there's places where like this inconsistent text, it matters. It changes the way that you would evaluate the champion. It changes your understanding of how good their moves are. And so I think there's a real need to get consistent in the way that you describe these skills, make it possible for people to understand what these skills are doing, how valuable they are, and how they should rate these heroes before they level them up. It also took me quite a while to figure out just how skills work in this game. So the tutorial sort of introduces you to these ultimate skills or energy skills. They're actually called both of those in various contexts, which is a little bit confusing. But yeah, so this is marked as an ultimate skill. I think over here, oh no, he doesn't have a passive. Other ones do. But then there are these common skills. So Flash Cut, common. Shrewd Phantom, common. Dancing Blade, common. And very early on, I'm looking at these champions and saying, okay, I know how to use this energy skill. How do I use these common skills? And it took quite a while for me to just notice, okay, they just use these automatically. They don't do the same attack when they're auto-battling. They come in and do different attacks at different times, so they're using these automatically. It took me somewhat longer to also realize these have cooldowns, and the cooldowns cycle through at some rate. Here, Taylor... some of these skill descriptions pointed that out. While Soul Journey is active, the cooldown of this skill is reduced from 9 seconds to 4 seconds. That's about the only place where I've seen the cooldown of a skill actually named. So here the default is 9 seconds. Nowhere else, I think, can you figure out what the cooldown is for a skill. That's another thing that I think is really critically important in evaluating heroes, is understanding, okay, how often can they use these various skills? The lack of that information makes it somewhat difficult to figure out which heroes are really going to perform the best in battle. So one thing they did that helps with this a little bit is the inherit system brings all of your heroes up to the same level as soon as you get them, more or less. So you don't sink a bunch of resources into leveling someone only to determine that they're trash. But that really only applies to leveling. Really, the bulk of their stats is coming from evolution, and that's not reversible. And so deciding whether you're going to evolve a hero or not is a big decision to make. And again, hero evaluation is a really important part of that. I think they don't need to reveal all the mechanics of like exactly how attack versus defense works or exactly how accuracy versus resist works. But knowing the cooldown of skills, I think, is pretty essential information. That's like a game that has like mana and not telling you how much mana these spells cast. Like it'll use some, you'll figure it out. That's something you need to know when planning a build for a certain hero. And it's something that I think the game should just give you automatically. Now, my biggest concern with the game right now is with some of the elements of the gameplay and really the heart and soul of the game. I think there are some elements missing that are really fairly important to get right. So, one of the things I've criticized about Raid in the past is that there's sort of no tactics, it's all metagame, all strategy. And while it has a really interesting metagame, sometimes that gets a little bit tiring. Uh, I think this game right now is a little weak on the tactics and the strategy. And ultimately, that's something that could really make the game grow boring over time. So right now, I'm sort of still progressing enough that I'm having fun, but I can see it getting very repetitive if some of the elements here aren't improved. So let's talk about tactics first. So this means like, what is there for you to do inside a fight? And there's really only one thing that you have any control over. This, let's see, let me turn off auto battle. Like it's still basically auto battle. The one thing you have control over is right here. When your energy skills charge up, you can choose when to use them. The answer is pretty much always as soon as they're charged up. And where to aim them. So look, I can hit two people with this one. So I'll go ahead and set that one off. Here we go. You can choose where to have Taylor jump to. Here's another one. So that's really the only decision that you have to make in the middle of the battle is to use those skills and where to aim them. And both of those decisions are usually pretty trivial. When to use it as soon as it's ready. Where to use it, aim at the people you're trying to kill. If it's an AoE skill, try to hit the most number of people. Similarly to a problem that Raid has, the difference between auto battle and manual battle is very small. It's fairly rare to have a situation where an expert player is going to make significantly different decisions than the auto battle does, to the point that they'll succeed more often by using manual battle. That's okay in the grand scheme of things. It does sort of mean this game is mostly an AFK game. Similarly to Raid, you set up auto battle, you let it run, you don't really need to pay attention to it while it's running. And while I think you can be fairly successful with that strategy for a game, Raid certainly has. I think ultimately having players trying not to spend time playing your game can be a somewhat limiting factor. That said, if that's the way that you want the combat to work, you need to pair that with a strategy system that is interesting and compelling. So strategy would mean like this part of the battle right here, where we're, setting up formation and choosing, who should make it into our team. Maybe this tank instead of the other one. Identifying the weaknesses of the enemy and figuring out what's going to work the best. And I'm not super deep into the game yet, and certainly not into something like a high-end arena or something like that. But for the most part, to this point, it hasn't felt to me like these decisions actually matter. By and large, you want to use your highest evolved heroes with the highest combat power. You want to put good gear on them. You do want to pay a little attention to the gear and make sure that you're putting on stats that match the specific heroes that you're working with. And then, basic things like, your tanks go in front, your casters go in back, and, a decent blend of sort of melee and range and AoE and things like that. You want all of that, but specifically which heroes you choose in which context seems to have pretty limited effect in my mind. Certainly, when you're at the level where you have a few people that are somewhat more evolved than the rest, a generalist that's highly evolved outperforms a specialist that's at a lower evolution level most of the time. And so it sort of takes away the feeling that the decision matters all that much. There's not very many skills that seem to really impact the rest of your party. So there'll be there's a fair amount of self buffs. You improve your own attack speed, you improve your own attack or put up a shield or things like that. But there's not a lot of team impacting mechanics where you have an ability that makes the rest of your party more effective in combat. And that's the sort of thing that makes the specific composition of your team matter a lot more. Similarly, there's not a lot of like wide-ranging debuffs. Most of the debuffs just seem to be these crowd control effects. Stun shows up in a lot of different kits. Knockdown in a few of them. There's a little bit of interest around mobility, so the ability to like surge past their front line and hit their casters or their ranged attackers directly without beating up their tanks first. So that looks effective in certain places. So maybe it's just that I haven't gotten deep enough into the game yet, but really at this point, it doesn't feel like it matters much who I choose specifically. If I just choose a tank, a ranged person, a nuker to invest in, it seems like I can use them pretty much anywhere, and that swapping them out for other heroes very rarely makes a significant difference. So that's something that I think is potentially a big problem for the game. If it doesn't really matter who you choose, why are you chasing all these different heroes? You can find someone with a little bit higher DPS, but again, if it's going to take you 3 months to get all the materials to evolve them all the way, then your motivation to chase that may be down a little bit. Yeah, so at the moment, there's not much to do in battle, and there's not really very important decisions to make outside of battle in terms of who you level up, who you invest in. By and large, it looks like this combat power number here at the top. That's the thing that really matters. When I'm looking in arena, I just try to pick off people with lower combat power than me. 9 times out of 10, higher combat power wins. It's not significantly about your specific strategy or team composition, other than not putting your casters in the front row. And so, if I don't get to a point where the game just feels, strategic, where there are intelligent decisions to be made, that's something that would definitely make me sour on this game pretty quickly. So, I'm hoping to find out, maybe watching other content creators, find out that I'm just not good at this game and haven't been paying attention to good team composition, or maybe this just develops more as the game goes on. But yeah, by and large, I haven't found decisions to matter all that much, other than trying to use champions with high combat power. All of that said, I really am having fun. I've been enjoying playing the game. I intend to keep playing it for a little while and see how it develops. It certainly looks like right around launch they're trying to do a lot of events and other things, and so new material may be coming out all the time. I'm going to stick with it for a while and see how it develops over time. But for now, I'd say 3 out of 5 stars, but with definite room to move either up or down, depending on how the developers evolve this game over time. That's it for today. JG out.